my old professor of law. So welcome today. I hope you find it very beneficial. Thank you.
What I want to do quickly, I know we're going to officially start the next couple of minutes with our first panel, but I'd like to get a feel for who's in the room so that we can all understand kind of perspectives and kind of play off each other in terms of activities or opportunities or resources that we may be doing. So I will start with Mary Charles.
I'm sorry, Michelle. I just want to make sure we hit the all muscular microphone, please. It's not always
Surely somewhere you can speak up. There we go.
Test. See, now we're on.
All right.
Good morning. I'm Mary Charles Branch, the Director of Student Life and Pro Bono at Campbell Law School. I've been here for 3 years. The position was created upon my arrival. As of course, as we moved to Raleigh, we've had increased ability to engage with pro bono opportunities, and there are tremendous opportunities to be had in Wake County. We've got some great partnerships, starting with Legal Aid, I'm really excited about. But if anyone has any pro bono opportunities for our students, I'm your contact person, and we look forward to this dialogue today and hopefully taking away some things for the Wake County Bar Association Public Service Committee. So I want to thank you all for being here.
Thank you. So if each of us can just go through and just say your name and where you work, that way we can move through quickly. But thank you, Mary Charles, again for helping out as much as you did and everything that you've done to help us get where we are. I'll start with Margaret Curran.
Good morning. I'm Margaret Curran. I'm on the faculty here at the law school. I also direct our externship program and have some partnering opportunities in existence with many of you. Same types of opportunities that qualify as pro bono may also qualify as externships. So they're cousins. Thank you.
All right.
I'm Craig Crum. I've worn many hats. I've been a deputy sheriff, a prosecutor, district court judge, superior court judge, and now I'm an associate in my wife's law firm. So that's my background. Looking forward to speaking to you all today. I know my first say.
And Claudia would say yes.
That's right. Yes, here.
I'm Paige Backwell with the Salvation Army of Wake County. Obviously, we have been interested in this subject with our clients and specifically our community.
Bill?
Bill Walton, I'm an emergency report judge.
Thank you. Sylvia?
Nancy Ray, I'm coordinator of the Wake County Volunteer Lawyers Program in the legal aid office. That's my counsel.
I'm Madonna from McAllister, and I am the court advocate with Interact.
We'll go to Linda.
I'm Linda Nunley. I'm a STEP administrator, and I'm just so happy to be here. We have about 600 people coming to STEP up every year. Many of them have backgrounds, all of them have needs, and it's just going to be such a great conversation to figure out how we can better help the people that come into our organization. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Keisha Millette. I am the Juvenile Program Manager at the Literacy Council of Wake County, and we're looking forward to a continued partnership with Campbell University.
Good morning. My name is Paul Shaw, and I spend most of my time nowadays in defending undocumented aliens.
Nancy.
Good morning, I'm Nancy Rommel. I'm with Safe Child, which is a child abuse prevention agency. We have a number of clients who turn to us because they've been referred to by the courts, sometimes for child abuse charges or for domestic violence. We also work closely with the district attorney's office through our child advocacy center in the last 2 years. Thank you for having me.
Sure.
Good morning. I'm Paige Phillipson with the Wake County Magistrate's Office.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Wendy Clark. I'm a community officer here in downtown Raleigh.
Good morning. I'm Jan Champ, Corporal in the Field Operations Division. Carrie.
Thank you.
I'm John Mabe. I'm in private practice in the law firm Nexon Pruitt. I've been involved in fundraising for legal aid and currently working with a group trying to address homelessness in downtown Raleigh.
I'm Jean Carey. I'm on the faculty here. I teach family law and trial advocacy. But in my former life, I was a legal aid attorney, and I care passionately about these issues.
And you're the chair of our public, our pro bono advisory committee.
Yes.
Good morning. My name is Ted Edwards, and I guess I have a couple hats. I am the immediate past president of the Wake County Bar Association, but I'm also here as a board member for Habitat for Humanity of Wake County.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Gaddy. Gaddy I'm the executive director of the Community Success Initiative, which is an annual nonprofit based here in the Raleigh-Durham area. We work with about 300 men and women in criminal incarceration every year who find themselves entangled in the criminal justice system. I started the program after I spent 5.5 years in North Carolina Department of Corrections myself, and kind of landed on my feet and had the obligation I felt to do the work that I do. So I'm also a graduate of the County Law School in 1982 in St. Street.
Well, welcome home.
I'm Chris Budnick. I'm with the Healing Place of Wake County. I'm also an adjunct at NC State.
Well, looking around doesn't look like I belong here, but I'm actually a second-year student here at Campbell, just being nosy. So, starting a fashion party.
No, but this is where it starts.
That's right.
Sally?
I'm Sally Shearer, Executive Director of the Child Advocate, a nonprofit providing legal representation for children.
And Sally's also a past president of the Wake County Bar and Judicial District.
Good morning. My name is Blair Williams. I'm here on behalf of the elected clerk. I'm the chief assistant clerk in Wake County. I'm also alumni of Campbell. And if you ever have a client that's having little issues working the processes of Wake County, you can just ask any deputy clerk that you see to contact Blair, and I'll try to help you through what your client needs.
Thank you very much. We are going to, turn to our first panel, which is our panel to discuss the unmet legal needs of, from a legal perspective. Judge Craig Crooms will be, Crooms, I always say Crooms, Judge Craig Croom, well, I see him in Walmart, so he's Craig and Claudia to me.
I'm the technology guru. I'm sorry to interrupt. It can be complicated around here.
We'll have a PowerPoint that will be kind of playing throughout, but I want to go ahead and kind of get started so that we can move through. But Judge Craig Croom will be moderating our panel. We have District Court Judge Christine Walzik, Jennifer Simmons, who is from Legal Aid of North Carolina, and Chuck Caldwell, who's the interim director for the Public Defender's Office here in Wake County. We think that we put together a good panel to kind of get different parts of what's going on in Wake County. We know it's not everyone, but what we hope to do is they will give each about a 10-minute conversation about what's going on. Please feel free to interject your conversations. We won't be using the note cards because we aren't as large as we hoped we would be. And Craig, I know that he will put people to task. We'll put each other to task. You put them to task, and you all put us to task. Because what we want to do is to have a conversation, and you'll use the information from this conversation at our lunchtime breakout sessions, where we're actually going to physically drill down into specific issues of concern that we have here in Wake County. So, Craig, let me let you go ahead and take it away.
Oh, good. Whole bunch of water for me. Good morning again.
Good morning.
As Michelle said, I'm just here just to help move this along. I'm not going to talk much, but we're going to start with introductions and we'll start with Judge Walzik. If you would just give, you said 5, 7 minutes, 10 minutes, just in terms of what you do and how your position impacts some of these unmet legal needs.
All right, my name is Christine Walsick, and I am currently assigned to the family court, domestic court, which means out of a month, I spend 3 weeks doing domestic cases, child support, alimony, custody, equitable distribution, and then 1 week out of the month, I rotate around and do criminal or civil or traffic court. I will say that over the year, I've been a judge since 2007. I think even at that time, we were being crushed with an increase in pro se litigants in the district court. We have 19 judges right now. We have courtrooms running all the time. And the latest statistics I got from Judge Rader is that in domestic court, about 50% of our cases have no lawyers at all, and about 75% of our cases have one attorney and one pro se litigant, which means the person is trying to ask for custody of their children, or they're trying to seek post-separation support or alimony, and they're on their own. So the need for us, as I see it, is that we have all these litigants who are, have no idea what to do. And in fact, I'm teaching a class next week to newer attorneys about how to take advantage of the local rules and how to use the rules of civil procedure to your advantage. And so if you're representing yourself and you have no legal background, you're really at a disadvantage in our courtroom. And we try to see through that, and we try to figure out what's in the best interest of the children, and we try to make sure people who need support get support, but it's really difficult to do that if they're not following the rules of civil procedure, or they don't know what to do to prove their case. An example would be for alimony or equitable distribution. There's very specific things I need to find before I can award alimony or before I can divide up property. And if they don't do it the right way, sometimes they're not going to be successful in our courtroom. So that's the initial need. I think the secondary need for us in domestic court is that with 50% pro se litigants, we are the ones as judges who have to type up all those orders. So if I rule in a case and I say custody will be to mom and dad will have this time period or whatever, I have to, after court, go back to my office and type all that up because I don't have any staff or any judicial assistants or anybody to help me with that. So we've tried to partner with Campbell and some of the other local law schools to get students to come in and help us type up those pro se orders. And that has been a huge help because I probably do, I'm going to say 5 or 6 orders a week, just typing up temporary custody or child support or those kinds of things. So there is some assistance for litigants in the child support arena, in the domestic violence arena with legal aid. But if it's just straight up custody or alimony or equitable distribution, there is no one out there except maybe dispute resolution services, which provide unbundled services. So there are people out there who will draft a complaint for you, but they won't come to court with you. So we're desperate in domestic court for people for clinics and things like that, for students to help or supervised, third-year supervised students, and then also to have students help the judges actually draft and prepare the orders. So that's what I would say, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Let me throw one out there. We talked earlier about, Mr. Davis still here, in terms of his law school professor talking about justice. Explain a little bit how difficult it is for you, and I remember my district court days, in terms of we have pro se litigants, and they're not doing so well trying their case. But in your heart of hearts, you know that they have a case, but they're not presenting. How do you deal with that?
Well, in the custody arena, I think I can get away with my job as a judge is to do what's in the best interest of the child. So unlike other kinds of cases, I feel more comfortable in a custody case asking the questions I need the answers to. So a lot of times, a pro se litigant will be on the stand and they'll tell me all these things, and at the end I realize they haven't told me what school their child goes to, or does their child have any medical conditions, and so I can ask those questions. But it's much more difficult in equitable distribution or alimony, where I don't really feel comfortable. I mean, it's not our job to ask the questions and assist the plaintiffs, because then the defendants feel like you've sided with them, and so you have to be very careful. You cannot assist litigants. But I can say things like, "Is there anything else you want to tell me about your expenses?" I can ask those kinds of questions, but it's very difficult, and we always are walking a fine line, making sure we don't assist either party. But it's especially difficult. It's much more difficult if there's an attorney on one side and not an attorney on the other side. If they're both pro se, then you can be a little bit more flexible about that. But if you've got an attorney on the other side who's doing a great job and who's making a motion to dismiss because they haven't done something they're supposed to do, sometimes a dependent spouse will come in and their case gets skipped. They haven't done what they're supposed to, and that's difficult for us, but that's what has to happen.
Okay. In terms of solutions, I think at one point we had the self-help center here. where is that at this point? I think we had a self-service. That's what we called it here. I know in Mecklenburg they call it self-help or something.
Yeah, it's gone.
How can we get that back up?
Well, the only thing we have right now is there's a dispute resolution center, which is a group that provides unbundled services. So they'll help someone file a complaint in an emergency case. So if someone is, if the child is, if there's a substantial risk of physical injury to the child, they come in, they want emergency custody, someone will help them draft a complaint. But after that, they're on their own. I'm not sure once we get in the new courthouse, we'll have much more space. But the problem has never been the space. I think it's been getting people to man a self-serve center.
Okay.
And the court doesn't want to be in the business of sending people to a certain person or a certain group. But if there's agencies out there that will assist people, we'll let them know. You can contact this agency or this agency or this agency.
I believe there's a question coming, or was that just a nod? Okay. All right. Just to move this along, we'll go ahead and move to Ms. Simmons. I can't see your name. Okay. If you would just introduce yourself.
Glad to. My name is Jennifer Simmons, and by way of introduction, I graduated law school from Carolina just down the road in 2002 and was fortunate enough to land on my feet in a clerkship with Justice Parker over the Supreme Court. And then what I consider to be even more fortunate to land in the job, which was my vocation at Raleigh, the legal aid office here in Raleigh, right after that in 2005. And the last year I've been transitioning to management with the office. And so Victor sent me here today. I think he's the more familiar face in these settings, but I'm excited to be here today, and thank you all for inviting me to join. I'll start out by way of introduction. I'm sure everybody in the room knows this, but if you'll forgive me as I start very basically. Legal Aid of North Carolina is a civil legal services provider. We have federal funding which prohibits us from touching anything that's remotely criminal. We also have very careful requirements about citizenship for our applicants, so we can't serve anyone without documentation except in the domestic violence arena. We also have got income and asset restrictions, so everybody that wants to be served with us has to go through some pretty strict screening, and that is a resource issue as well as an eligibility issue for us. Within the last 5 years, it's funny, I was actually cleaning my office over the break and I came across some old intake sheets from the late 90s and early aughts. And the caseload has changed so much for our advocates since that time. I actually did an internship with the office back in 2000, and I remember that as well from my experience then. But at that time period, we didn't have a gatekeeper. So the cases that came in the door were the people who called. I mean, you maybe have an intake day, and so the first 8 cases were what got in on the desk. And it was custody, landlord, custody, maybe a consumer law case about a water filtration system or something like that. And the caseload has changed so dramatically after 2007. And there are a couple reasons for that. The first is, of course, the bust, which has just changed the legal needs and the exigency of those legal needs that people are facing. The second thing is, from our perspective, and I think it's valuable because it affects what cases that we are able and are it to handle. Our intake system changed dramatically in 2007, I think for the better. We now have our centralized intake system, which probably some of you are aware of, which is a phone hotline. So people that call into legal aid, they might call our local office, and we're going to route them to this hotline, which is almost statewide. It's based in Garner, actually, but we cover the statewide area. And people who get through automatically get screened for intake and eligibility immediately, and then assuming they're eligible, they go straight to an attorney. And that attorney is going to do a very thorough interview and give them legal advice right there and then, which is wonderful. Sometimes they'll go ahead and even investigate if it's a quick phone call to a landlord or a quick phone call to a utility company that might resolve something. They're going to go ahead and make that call as well. So the cases that we're getting in our local office for representation are actually extended service cases. We're not getting, I think as an example, a non-payment of rent landlord-tenant case where there's no defense, which is great for that person to get advice about the time to move out, but it's not the best use of our time as advocates to be going through the administrative steps that it needs to do that. So I think that's a really useful thing for us. And also that means that person is also getting the advice that they need. However, so that's our main source of intake. And I want to be upfront about it. I mean, the reality is it is not a perfect system in that it does not have the people power or the finances that it needs because I know good and well when people dial into that number, a lot of times they're not able to get through, and that's the reality. I think once people do get into the system, they are very well served, but getting in is a challenge. For that reason, we also have emergency intake here in Raleigh, and that means people who either call in or walk in with very close court dates or emergency situations, and we take those kind of as an additional intake stream. And that means people with, a court date within the next week or two can go ahead and get service, and I think that's really valuable too. However, that impacts a lot of things. It impacts our ability to refer those cases out. I think now's a good time to acknowledge. I feel so lucky to work in Raleigh for a variety of reasons, but one of the biggest ones, our bar here in Raleigh is outstanding for the volunteer service that is provided to the low-income citizens of the county. It's really extraordinary how many cases we're able to refer out, and that's well known. I think I'm just saying what everybody knows, but it would be remiss of me not to acknowledge that. We're so lucky. So when we get cases on an emergency basis with a nearby court date, it's much harder to refer those out. If people could come in the intake earlier in the system, could get through to our intake line earlier, it would be a lot easier to refer those cases that are meritorious and ripe for referral out to the private bar. Another impact of that is that it's obviously just much more intensive, time intensive, and you don't have as much structure over your time to be able to use it efficiently and economically because you have this rush, the day before court. The person's going to, with potentially good claims or potentially important counterclaims that you need to draft and serve in the cases, within a day or two, and that's really challenging. The other thing I wanted to mention that's changed within the last 5 years for our office is we're having to prioritize the types of cases that we're able to take a lot more stringently, and I think that has to do with the economic times that we find ourselves in these days. As an example of this, housing cases. We have great private landlord-tenant cases that come in the door that we reject in favor of subsidized housing because we have to evaluate, we're at that point where we have to evaluate the financial benefit of the case. And a person whose subsidy may be worth $500 a month to them, if they lose that subsidized housing, that's more valuable than the person who has a family with small children who may be losing a roof over their head. That's obviously an incredibly important thing as well, but they theoretically can go out and find another unsubsidized house, whereas the person's not going to be able to find another subsidy of $500 a month. So we are having to make incredibly difficult decisions of that nature in terms of prioritizing the services that we can provide, and that's just a matter of resources and the volume of cases that's coming in the door. We also are doing it based on the value of benefit. Consumer law cases that may be just about money. I mean, that's, a couple $1,000s is a lot to a person, but we're having to say, well, it's not about a roof, it's not about a child, it's not about food, therefore we're just not able to handle that case. Now again, we're really fortunate that SEAL is often able to refer those cases out to the private bar, but we are having to really weigh and reject a lot of cases we would like to take in-house. Again, we've got these gatekeepers now, so we're not actually seeing the custody intake that is needed. But I would echo what Judge Wolzig says. I would say that is the largest unmet legal need in Wake County. Victor estimated that, I was coming in and saying, how our caseloads changed. Look at these things from the, 1999. Everybody was doing custody. And he said, well, it's not that people don't need it anymore. It's just we're not seeing them on our desk. He said back at that time, it was like 60%. They did need surveys. 60% of the calls that we got were about custody. And I would reckon that's probably not changed. It's just that they don't get through to us to get any advice. I can actually talk to you a little bit about our intake. We handle custody on a extremely limited basis. It basically has to stem from domestic violence, or there are a couple other priority areas that might get in the door, but they are really the rarity. What we have at this point is a clinic that provides general advice and information about filing a custody action because the family court rules are so complex for someone that's not a lawyer. It's complex for lawyers too sometimes, but just to get something calendared is really daunting, we think, for a pro se individual. So we at least have some way to help people file a case and get it on the calendar, and we think that's helpful. But there's no additional representation nor individualized advice about the facts of their particular case. It's just about getting your foot in the door. And then our intake system can provide advice about defensive actions, but that's pretty much where it is on that area. I want to spend just a little bit longer. I think I may have talked more than my designated time, but where we have identified that private attorneys can be particularly helpful are cases that are related to their actual work on a daily basis anyhow, or at least there's a decent amount of attorneys doing these types of cases already. They're somewhat analogous to their regular caseload. And those areas are consumer law. I mean, that kind of goes without saying. Contracts are contracts, whether you're looking in a commercial setting or a private setting. So we think that's one that we really don't have too much trouble referring out at all. Housing cases, I think, are a very manageable area of law. It's, the rules are in Chapter 42, and we think that can be pretty easily trained, and people can feel pretty comfortable doing that type of litigation. We have training regularly. I think there's another training coming up in March through the North Carolina Bar Association. And I think that's a great opportunity for private attorneys. And then domestic violence Project Together has been a huge success. And we're, again, so lucky to have the bar. But I think it ebbs and flows in terms of the volume of attorneys who are taking cases. I also think there's an opportunity for newer attorneys. We've got this, and again, I'm not, but I don't think it's a secret that we've got these newer attorneys who are less employed than they might like to be these days. And I think that there's a potential there for newer attorneys to help more than they are. But what I think it needs is partnership with more experienced attorneys to assist them to feel confident enough to take those cases and really to do an adequate job representing in those cases where they are taking them. So I think that, for example, a mentorship program or something like that in the domestic violence arena would be that's an idea that I had that could be valuable coming out of this, would be pairing more experienced attorneys with newer attorneys to handle one or two domestic violence cases till the newer attorney feels more comfortable handling them on their own, just as someone who's done Project Together already. I'll rest there unless...
I was enjoying the conversation.
The one-sided conversation.
Yes, but it was still now we'll start the dialogue. One thing I want to commend Legal Services on, Legal Aid of North Carolina, make sure I say it correctly. When I was a district court judge, I always like to tell this story. Someone from the Volunteer Lawyers Project came in and helped a young lady with a car repair. It was an $800 car repair. They held her car for 18 months. It was unauthorized. And one of the volunteer lawyers from Morton Van Allen came in with that case. Ended up, the defendant did not respond to interrogatories. He fired his lawyer, so they didn't respond. Came to court for trial. Of course, all that was deemed admitted. Ended up this $800 car repair. Ended up with a $10,000 verdict, and then treble damages to $30,000. So I say with the Volunteer Lawyers Project, it's a great project. I think the lawyer, he's from Morton Van Allen, I can't remember his name now, he really enjoyed doing that. And that's why I would say one thing about developing those relationships, because, sometimes when you're just dealing with billable hours, you're just sitting there like, okay, I got to do this, but this right here makes you feel good. And, and I think that's why some of us, I look at that second-year law student back there, one of the reasons why you go to law school, I know I went to law school, was not to make money, but to make sure people are treated correctly. Justice, that's what we go to law school for. So, but let me ask this question real quick. Tell me, I just want to be clear on the practice areas. What do you said? You mentioned.
Yeah.
Tell me the practice areas.
Thank you for that reminder. I appreciate that. That should have been part of the first thing I said. We handle domestic violence, very limited other domestic area, as I mentioned. Unemployment issues or employment issues as well. More unemployment these days, unfortunately. Mortgage foreclosure prevention, landlord-tenant, public benefits, education, and consumer are areas of practice.
And so I'm very familiar with domestic violence in terms of the folks who would do courtroom 9A, help with those. I can't remember the young lady's name, but she is a true.
Atia Mosley?
She's a true advocate.
Oh, yes.
She fights, no question about that. In terms of employment, is that more of unemployment benefits? The ESC hearings?
The vast majority of cases we're handling these days, and this is a switch since 2007, is unemployment cases through the ESC. We certainly have handled in the past plenty of wrongful discharge through the state, discrimination when the facts warranted, but these days unemployment benefits is, vast majority of those cases.
Okay. And in terms of foreclosure prevention, I think that speaks for itself. In terms of how far do y'all represent throughout the whole process?
We do loan modifications. We we do representation at foreclosure hearings.
Okay.
And, potential predatory lending when the issue arises.
And public benefits. I mean, I know it sounds
No.
simple, but tell me about that.
That's my area to my heart. So, Social Security benefits, we actually don't particularly help people qualify because we have a very strong private bar that does that here in Wake County. But we do help people with unpaid legal issues, so overpayments, people who are being terminated from benefits. Medicaid, food stamps are really those primary areas of practice.
And how do you get the message out to folks in terms of that you offer these services? Because I just asked the question. I've been around since 1994. So how do we let folks know what you do?
That's a great question. Outreach is something that we, again, used to do a bit more of, and we have not done as much as we would like to do these days. So I think that's actually a conversation perhaps for the group is how can we do a better job of getting the word out of what we do. I mean, we struggle with it because we're certainly not twiddling our thumbs, but at this other hand, we want people who need our services to know about our services. So.
Your service together.
Yeah. Regarding your representation of benefits for clients around food stamps, what is a lot of times we get a lot of clients in our office who have criminal backgrounds and some with drug offenses. What's the current level of regarding their eligibility for food stamps?
Well, you're asking the right person. Anybody with a felony drug conviction is not eligible for food stamps. That's federal law.
And is there any way we can fight that? Because it seems kind of just...
that would be a United States Congress level fight.
Okay. I thought that was it. I just want to hear from you.
Yes, sir.
But it just seems kind of... especially if a person's trying to get themselves back together.
I will not argue with you about that. But I will say one case I actually was successful with is a gentleman who had an incorrect notation on his plea agreement. Boy, this is how far I am from criminal law. I'm not even sure I'm using the right words. But on his plea agreement, it reflected that he had pled to a felony. In actuality, he had pled to a misdemeanor, and we were able to get that corrected so that he was eligible for food stamps. But I mean, that's one case in 100, probably one case in 1,000, perhaps. That's the actual situation.
So any drug felony?
A drug felony? No. Let me hold on. There's an exception. It's something like F. What are the bottom level felonies? F and G? H and I. The bottom level felonies, I think, may be excluded, but I'd have to double check that.
Right. Okay.
I was going to ask a generic question about that same topic, which is, what's the greatest demand for services that you have which you cannot meet because of restrictions through your funding?
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
I know. Well, the reality is I'm not sure that I have that data because they don't get through to me or to our office. I am sure undocumented individuals face great needs. You know who actually would be the right person to answer that question is probably there's an immigrant rights project with the North Carolina Justice Center that ends up serving some of the, I'm thinking of undocumented individuals right now, but they end up serving the undocumented individuals, and I know they handle a lot of mobile home cases and other types of housing. When you look at the income eligibility issues right above our income threshold, boy, I really just don't have the data for that, so I would really be speculating at this point. I again probably look to custody if you want to be frank. That's the biggest unmet need for people low income as well as that just are having trouble struggling to hire a lawyer.
I was just going to say, with what we see at the North Carolina Bar Association in our lawyer referral service, for example, the overwhelming number of people that are calling are looking for assistance with custody, and then we don't keep statistics on this next part of it, but a ton of them of that group will say, I can't afford the $5,000 retainer.
Well, and just if I could just add to the custody issue, just so you guys get an idea of the magnitude of it, we have 4 judges that pretty much all we do is custody 3 weeks. 3 weeks out of the month, we have 4 judges rotating through custody court. Each of us has 500 or more cases open at any one time. One of us has 600 or 700 cases open, but half of those have no lawyers. So each of us like right now, I think I have 550 something open cases. So half of those we have no lawyers. Now not all those are custody cases. Some are alimony or equitable distribution, but you almost always have custody going along with those other issues. So the magnitude of it is huge.
Linda.
I actually got two. What about, one of the things that we see a lot is people who are coming out of prison with child support issues that have built up while they were in prison. So they want to find a job, they get a job, and all of a sudden their income is going completely back to past, which is, I'm not saying that's wrong, but do you handle those cases legally?
As part of our resource balancing, we don't, because those people are entitled to representation because they face potential imprisonment.
And the second question I've got is, I love hearing about your hotline, and that is so great. And I do think that we need to know more about that. But I think that there is a language barrier almost just for all of us. When you call and we don't know what to ask for, or our people don't know what to ask for, you can be told, I'm sorry, we don't handle that. And it's just a mere instance of us not knowing what to ask for, that it's a landlord issue rather than it's just, and any kind of education that can be provided for the nonprofit community, for the groups that are actually working with these individuals to help us help the people so that it's more expedites the process for you guys would be fabulous, because I don't feel like I know the language.
I think that's really valuable, and I'm going to be honest with you, we would love to be forced to do more outreach. It is something that is easy to fall out of habit of doing. We're all really busy at our desks and we're all handling cases, but we would love to be kicked into doing a little more outreach and education than we do at this exact moment. So I think that's something that could result from today that could be really valuable.
And we can add that when we get in our smaller groups, we can make sure that we put somebody, or everybody can put that on the list. But thank you.
You know, Ashley Campbell just called me about that. We're moving on that, so that's great.
Blair from the clerk's office. I would like to follow up. I'm probably your biggest outreach referral service. We have the opportunity for over 25,000 civil cases that are filed in a year in Wake County. But it's but I want to make sure that we're doing it effectively. And a lot of times, my concern is when we have a disgruntled pro se litigant or potential litigant who's very frustrated and taking his frustration out on our staff, and then we say, we don't have a form for that, and then that just raises their ire even to an nth degree. But at some point, I do realize that you do have kind of gateways into the program, but I'm not sure of those gateways, so I don't know if I'm doing or if I'm adding fuel to that person's ire when I say go to legal aid, and then 2 days later he comes back to me and saying, you don't know what you're talking about because they didn't handle me. So I'm trying to see if you can express any hardline qualifiers today. As in income, or is that like a floating scale?
We've got charts. It varies obviously with the number of people in the household. I mean, we serve. Yeah, there are hard lines. We serve people up to 187.5% of the federal poverty line. And there's a very easy chart we can pull out for you that has those numbers on it.
Perfect.
We've got asset limits. And then in certain areas, domestic violence is one where there's no income consideration. And mortgages, we actually have more money, or money for a higher income and asset limits than those. So yeah, that may be something that could be useful to you.
Yeah, and that would be great because at this point, I love being your outreach advocate, but I don't want to do you a disservice by loading you up with walk-ins that you can't handle, and quite frankly, the next time they see me, they're even more frustrated if they don't qualify. So I'd like to be able to, disseminate some information as to where I can make it effective for you guys to handle who you're going to handle, and I don't mind being the guy that says no, you can't qualify, or these are the parameters I don't think that you're going to qualify.
Yeah, you tell us, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea. That's an easy one.
I've been given a hint to move on, subtle hint, and what we're going to do at this point is, and I enjoy that discussion because one thing I want to throw out there too, now I'm going to move on, is as we mentioned some of these things in terms of, in the law we have a tendency to be reactive, And I always said my next job would be a lobbyist, or I'm sorry, governmental relations as they call it now. Because the issue you brought up, Dennis, about the federal government and you can't get benefits and you're trying to get your life back together. So I mean, we need to think about those issues as well. I don't know if you all have some kind of lobbying arm or something like that.
Legal North Carolina doesn't touch that because of federal restrictions, but the North Carolina Justice Center would probably be our downstairs neighbor who would be happy to talk about
Just throwing that out there.
And we also do a lot of advocacy work with the Justice Center around lobby day to have the legislature around these issues. So
okay.
And I was going to say, the North Carolina Bar Association for 1970 something, 73 or so, we've always been supporting legal aid, and they're always on our lobbying, our governmental.
Yeah, because no one likes that word lobbying anymore. So, Chuck Caldwell.
Thank you, Judge Green.
How you doing, sir?
Fine, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Chuck Caldwell, Public Defender's Office in Raleigh. One thing about the clients that we get is that they are not there by choice or by family circumstance, but they're forced there. And we take all comers, and we are really a user of services. And in that sense, what I would like to know more about is the resources that everybody has. Legal aid and the police department, community policing. I was just talking with the officer this morning. It's oftentimes in our office we don't realize what's out there and what's available. And I'd like to be able to open a dialogue and bring y'all, say, into the office at 8:30 in the morning to talk to particularly the misdemeanor people, but the lawyers, and so they know what's out there. Because we get mental health people all the time, which is probably the biggest unmet problem we see. That all we can do, if they're there on a misdemeanor and they've got 20 days until their court date, and they get to the court date, and it's 20 days credit for time served, and they're out, and they're going to be back again by the end of the year, and everybody knows that. And there's the justice system itself. The criminal justice system is not set up to make these people have a mental health remedy. You can always put somebody, you can put somebody on probation and say, get a mental health evaluation and follow up with treatment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we all know that's not going to happen. They're not going to take their meds. They don't have a place to live. They're going to fall through the cracks. And the probation officer is probably not even going to find them. But if we could, yes, Sally.
And that's something I've been screaming about for 30 years. The mental health system is screwed up. It's been destroyed. They close the hospitals. They don't have the homes. I don't know what the answer is, but we're stuck with that.
Well, and we're stuck with that. And it'd be interesting to, everybody talks about how the mental health system changed when they closed Dorothea Dix and kicked everybody out. I think that was federal law that said you have to have community-based therapy and housing. And I know when I was in college, I worked at Dorothea Dix for a year. And that was when they had people that had been there since they were 20 years old, and now they were 60, and they were happy. They didn't know they were there, and they weren't getting in trouble, and they weren't sick, or if they got sick, they had hospital care. But then you talk to people that are in community-based therapy, and they say, no, institutionalization is not good. And I'm not a mental health professional, so I don't have an opinion. I just know what I think and what I see, like you. And it seems to be there must be a better way. But we are inasmuch as our clients are your consumers, and what needs to happen is that, so my attorneys need to know about your services so we can send people to you. And Dennis and I were at Campbell together way back in Boots Creek before Kevin Hall started dropping bricks off the second floor. About that felony thing, the federal felony, and what you were saying about the age and the low-level felonies, this issue's come up in possession of firearm by a felon, where it's mistake conviction, felony conviction, and they were later charged at some point down the road with a felony firearm by felon event. The case law now has recently come out where it depends on what the individual's sentencing exposure was. And it used to be, it was originally interpreted if for, say, a Class H felony, the maximum penalty was, say, 12 to 16 months or whatever, anything over a year, then that felony conviction would count for federal purposes down the road. And that's been re-examined now by the 4th District. And in my particular situation, the most I could get for my little cocaine offense was 6 months. And for federal purposes, that's not a felony. Although it is felony possession of cocaine, all I could get would be a 6-month sentence. And so some of your people, as you were saying, some of your people might fall under that restriction.
So is that something that the person at DSS would determine when they do the intake of that person to get their food stamps?
They're probably not aware of it.
That's what I'm saying.
They're probably not thinking about it because this whole issue's just come up in firearm felon prosecutions.
They got some law to about the law.
And, and I'll get your email and send you a notice of that opinion in Green Light. Because it's probably because I doubt any of us are reinventing the wheel with our problems here today. Yes.
Especially with regard to the needs of mental health criminal defendants, is there any dialogue between your office and the district attorney's office to try to figure out a non-prosecutorial method of dealing with that? For 2 reasons: to hopefully address the mental health issue more effectively and get them out of the misdemeanor system that just clogs up superior court misdemeanor appeals and everything else.
Officer Clark wants to jump in there on that when I see the look on her face, but we'll leave that alone.
The officer will have her turn here.
Yes, right.
There's no for that particular clientele, there's no interactivity between the public defender's office and DSS.
Not that I'm aware of, no. No, I know that there ever has been. And part of that may be the nature of the beast of district court, in as much as it's a high-volume court, and cases move on through. Whether the DA's office would want to spend the time, our office would be willing to spend the time if it would make any difference. But of course, our primary concern is what does the client want? The client might say, I don't want to be on probation. I'd rather do 20 days in jail and go. Okay. We're stuck. We can't make them do anything. I can give them a card, I can give them a list of providers, whatnot like that, but aside from that, it's not my job to beat him over the head and make him live a better life.
My question was thinking more in terms of the referral issue without flooding.
Well, that would be good. That would be getting into mental health court, like we have drug court. Judge Brooke and I have been on drug court together for years. Those treatment courts are very successful. The model is proven nationwide. It's hard to get money for it. Our drug court in Wake County that has no state funding. It's all grant funded, and that's the way it is around the state. Grant funded from either from local county government, sometimes full funded, or grant or private grant.
I'll add in just a complicating factor that I attended a training with individuals from Medicaid, and it was actually designed for DSS attorneys and parent and child advocates on the issue of access to mental health treatment when it's ordered by judges, and how much more challenging that's getting based through the Medicaid limitations on accessing treatment. The mental health treatment that is there for uninsured individuals is waning to becoming less and less existent. And just to finish my thought briefly, I know that a lot of the parent attorneys in particular were expressing just this extreme frustration that their clients were being ordered to go get evaluated and engage in counseling and unable to access that at all because Medicaid switched over to managed care. Just because the courts ordered it does not mean you get treatment. And the similar experience, there's really just not a lot for uninsured individuals who have been ordered to go and obtain that. So that's something that complicates it additionally.
I work a lot with the mental health as far as the magistrate's office, where your IBC process starts. A lot of times in our office, it either comes through us as the petitioner brings forth the respondent who's in need of care, or the hospital will fax us over the information as far as what's going on. And we do meet as a community group every third Thursday. It's all the doctors, all the hospitals, we come and sit together as a group to determine kind of what's going on. Right now, Wake County is in a state of flux. Our LME's office is getting ready to become an MCO or a managed care organization, hopefully provided all their licensure goes through, which will put Durham, Wake, Johnston, Cumberland counties together as one managed care organization. So that means all of our Medicaid dollars will be coming through one funnel for those 4 counties. So that is going to affect how everybody receives services for mental health as well as substance abuse, because that's part of the component in mental health. So you're going to see a lot of changes. And a lot of the changes are coming through as far as reduction in services, because a lot of things are getting ready to close. UNC is coming in as a large provider. So starting, well, it was supposed to be today, but it's more like March, because their licensure is not complete. So a lot of things are kind of changing. And a lot of places that used to be able to order services are not going to be in existence any longer because of the changing of the funding. And that's a big problem. And we know it's a big problem. But Alliance Healthcare is working, and they should be, they should be active today. The 1-800 hotline should be available not only to connect people with their services, but to connect them with their actual care provider in the community 24 hours a day, which should help the officers be able to connect people. But it's been a big change. And
Now, if there's an adult that is not on Medicare, who does that adult call?
They would have to call still Alliance. They're going to be our main provider.
Would they be eligible for services?
Sure, but as far as which services to connect them to, we're going to have some sort of an evaluation. Somebody's going to have to be willing to seek treatment, or they're going to be forced to seek treatment from the IBC process.
But they would be able to receive treatment even though there was no funding source directly to them.
Our main right now is still crisis and assessment. So anybody that can get to the Wake Forest campus, they're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If they can just get there, either voluntarily or involuntarily, someone can evaluate them to start the treatment process. And they either get connected with services or they find a way to seek services for them.
Do they have to be in crisis when they go?
No.
Or can they just go and say?
They can go and just say they need treatment.
Oh, good.
Sure. I mean, most of the time they're not. Most of the time they're there and they're deteriorating at a rapid rate.
I see a flow chart in the future. I mean, really, that will help a lot in terms of how to navigate these systems. And it's good that we're having this program because we're all connected in some way. Because in terms of the cases that legal aid, the cases they're dealing with, the cases in the PD's office, those cases will come before Judge Walsick, not only in the family court, but also the criminal court. But let me ask this question real quick, just to ask the same question of Ms. Simmons, but it's going to be in the reverse. We know your practice area. It's criminal law. But what are your restrictions? Because someone mentioned earlier expungements. You're not going to represent someone in an expungement.
Correct.
Go ahead.
We represent pending criminal charges. Now, oftentimes when we finish a case, if the individual is eligible for expungement, you go ahead and file the expungement paperwork then. But in your situation where somebody comes up a year or two down the road and say, I need to clear this up, that's not us. We cannot help them. And fixing driving records after the fact, things like that, that's just not our bailiwick.
That was my next question.
Paid to do.
That was my next question because, as I was telling you earlier, I had to go represent someone who was driving while I was revoked this morning. And in terms of how do we what can we do in terms of unmet legal needs where that person has a driving while license revoked and it's sort of a crime of, we have an answer back there. Yes,
I
ma'am.
just have a comment to that, actually. I informed yesterday that North Carolina Central Law School and Legal Aid in Durham have put together some expungement CLEs and opportunities for lawyers and law students to help folks in that area. And I think they're holding one. Jennifer's shaking her head. It's down in near Southern Pines. No, I can't recall the exact town, but they've selected a town to go down, I guess, and assist in about 2 weeks. So I mentioned to Michelle maybe there could be some pieces there we could maybe implement here in Wake County and have something very similar. So I intend to look into that. I don't know, Jennifer, if you're familiar with that at all.
I don't know the specific clinic you're talking about, but I do know we've been working on expunction clinics and helping educate people.
Be an education type seminar. So I just wanted to add that.
Okay, and also I'll throw out there about the driving side of this. If we could somehow, in terms of unmet legal needs, what happens is a person, they keep getting these driving charges based on, for example, Judge Walsh will tell you she's in criminal court, she's in traffic court, a third of her calendar will be driving while license revoked. But it won't be based on DWI, it will be based on failure to appear, didn't pay their money, and that becomes a crime of economics because they can't pay it. And I'm about to get busy because I'm working for my wife because it's tax return time. And so this is when everybody will go and try to take care of these things. And I'll suggest to the local law schools maybe because unfortunately, I mean, you can't do it because you're restricted. You can't help with fixing driving records, but maybe a clinic at one of the law schools because I know they're doing something in Chapel Hill over in, it actually came out of the DA's office where they started a clinic to help people get their license back. And it's Jeff Neiman with the DA's office in Orange County. So what happens is you help the person fix their license to the point where they can drive legally again. And then what happens is it ends that cycle of just keep coming to court, paying all this money. Because you know court costs $190 now, late fees $200, everything just adds up. So are there any other restrictions? You said no expungements, can't help with driving records, any other restrictions?
And if we can help with the during the pendency of a charge.
Right.
If you've got other things in that county, other outstanding tickets in Wake County, I encourage people to draw them all in and take care of everything at one time. But of course, a lot of times people have things out of county. Can't help anything with that. But we pretty much, what the person is charged with now is what we are authorized to handle. Yes.
So I know a little, I've never practiced criminal law. My experiences with legal aid in North Carolina, can you tell us a little bit about how someone qualifies for your service? I mean, just like people don't know a whole lot about how you qualify for legal aid in North Carolina. There are probably some histories, assumptions, et cetera. Can you tell me?
It is, and Judge Walzak and Judge Credit will be able to answer the second half of this question. It is indigent defense services. So anybody receiving our services has to be determined to be indigent by a judicial official. Generally the first judge they see, which is the district court judge. And there's a one-page financial statement that people fill out. And do you have an income? How much you pay in rent? What's your light bill? What's your child support? You have a bank account? You have a car? And then the judge looks at that and gleans some sort of poverty level off of it, and says, "Yeah, you go to the public defender. Here's the number for the public defender."
That's a really interesting topic because they fill out a form. There's 19 different judges who do 19 different things, and frankly, I would say half the time we're not getting truthful answers on there. So if someone lives with their spouse, it's probably hard. If someone lives with their spouse, they're supposed to put their spouse's income on there. We can't go behind those forms. I mean, we're filling out, we're approving or denying, hundreds of those a week. So are we going, some of us are more critical and ask more questions and and say, well, you got charged with driving this, Cadillac Escalade, and you didn't put that on this form, So some of us are better about doing that, and others just look at the income and the expenses of the number of dependents and try to decide if somebody's indigent or not, or have our own little rules. But someone in the exact same situation may get a court-appointed attorney from one judge and not from another judge. And so I have always wished there was some sort of more consistent system, for everybody, so it was fair. Because some people feel like it's not fair if they come in front of one judge and they make X amount of dollars and they don't get one, and someone else who makes more than them got one. So that's a whole other opinion as well.
Now, there is a rule, I don't know if it's rule or statute, that if we, as the public defender, if we determine that our client is not indigent, we have an affirmative duty to go back to the court and say, Judge Blow is not indigent. We want to be taken off and make him hire as an attorney. I think I've done that once in my whole career where it was just obvious. And finally, I got an attorney's big investment case. Obviously, he had a bank account somewhere and hidden money.
You're assuming his guilt there.
Allegedly.
Well, not, is he indigent? I wouldn't have weird not having gotten that.
He was in the Cayman, so that's what I'm saying.
But that just but there is a provision where we can basically kick the person out if we determine that they are not indigent.
Well, and we appoint them all the time, and then they come in with their hired attorney,
Well, yeah. Well, and you never know who's paying for it. Of course, they're out of jail. They had a $20,000 bond, maybe, and they're out of jail. Who paid that bond? Probably they did not. Probably Mama paid it, or their girlfriend paid it.
Girlfriends.
And a lot of us just keep sucking Mama dry, paying for lawyers forever. Just because they have a lawyer doesn't mean it's their money. It's somebody's money. And what, of course, the court is looking at is their money. And, of course, people 16 to 17, juveniles automatically qualify. And I think as a rule, people under 18 are always given an attorney.
Let me throw some out there real quick about that as well. You talk about inconsistency among 19 judges. I held court in 40 counties, and there's inconsistency throughout the state where in terms of what is indigent in, let's say, Duplin County and what is indigent in Wake County. In terms of, it's just different in terms of how people view it. One thing that may also throw out there too, that if you are appointed an attorney and you plead guilty or you found guilty, that will be assessed as part of your probation fees, or a civil judgment could be entered against you. Now, one thing about that, in terms of the civil judgments, I'll ask Blair about that. How much of that we actually collect, I don't know, but that's entered a lot. And because of these tough economic times, it's just a piece of paper saying that we have a judgment against them. So we do recoup some of that money, and I think every so often AOC will send out these things about how well we're recouping per county. I think, do we still get those, Blair?
We do, and most of the time it is basically whether or not they filed an income tax return, because then that money captured is from any fund. But that would be the only collection method. But speaking of that, just the personnel to try to process all those judgments, it is a tax to process all of the judgments to get them ready, because now it's crunch time. Because as you mentioned, if the state is going to receive anything, it's going to be during tax return time.
Again, it comes back to everything we talk about today. It comes back to resources. Even trying to collect civil judgment, we're still talking about resources. Mental health court, we're still talking about resources and money. So, yes, sir.
Do I understand from your comments, Chuck, that now your misdemeanor PDs can ask a judge, well, I found these 4 other Wake County misdemeanors, if you'll point me on those, I can get everything, work something out of it. Now, will your misdemeanor PDs look to do that as opposed to just handling that one case when there's a failure to appear on 4 others?
I don't think they. It depends on how they want to handle it, what's being disposed that day.
You can. You
can do. But of course, you can ask to be appointed, and the way to do that would be to grab the cases from the clerk's office, bring them up to the courtroom that day, and either just dispose of them without adding the numbers.
But is your
to
staff
the tally
encouraged
sheet.
to do that?
I believe, I have not actively encouraged them. I think they do that out of a sense of their responsibility. Yes, Dan?
Chuck, are there any instances where a person who's incarcerated with a certain charge, maybe a driving violation, that when his court date comes up, he will not be brought back to court? Are there any cases where he won't be brought back to court, depending on the seriousness of the charge? Because what happens is we get...
You mean if he's in the Department of Correction?
Yes.
Yeah. Somebody has to know that the prosecutor's responsibility to send a writ request to the prison and have him brought over. And, for a driving ticket, if the guy's in a prison farm in Tarboro or whatever, it's almost not worth it. But then from a prosecutorial attitude, and this would probably vary district by district, they sit there and oftentimes have the attitude of, hey, it's his fault, and that's something that he's going to have to work on.
Well, here's the practical result by that not happening. We'll have a person who got out of prison. He's eligible to get out of prison, say, a week.
No.
He has a driving charge that was, when he was incarcerated, is pending. Okay? The court date comes up while he's still incarcerated. He doesn't go. He gets a call and fail. So when he gets out of prison, the sheriff is waiting for him at the gate with a warrant.
Yep, all the time.
Now,
and here we go again.
Well, you've probably seen that more than I have. I know what I've handled for several people is they get out and they say, I've got this old ticket, and I go to the DA's office with the record. And you find the DA with some authority and have the dismissals filled out and let them sign them.
Wonderful.
And they're all happy.
I think it's a practical matter too, though, that a lot of DAs take the position, instead of dragging them back by writ, they just dismiss them with leave. And that way, when they get out, they're not subject to arrest necessarily, but then they go to get their driver's license after they've got a job and everything. They said, I'm sorry, you can't get your driver's license. And then they got to go back and get reinstated.
But I have found that it's usually if you ask the DA
to reinstate.
Well, just to go ahead and dismiss the darn thing. Somebody's been in prison for the past 2 years, and you say, well, they've been in prison for 2 years.
Right.
Well, they've been penalized for their life sins. And let them start afresh. They've got a brand new opportunity to do
There's
whatever.
a lot of dismissals with leave that just don't get caught.
People
who get out of prison, and they won't writ them because it's economically inconsistent to do that. The money's just not there, so they just dismiss it with leave, and 18 months later, the incarcerated person who's getting out is just forgotten.
And a lot of times I wouldn't know about that until they already got the warrant. So they don't get to me until they already got to try to get home and get home because the warrant wasn't on the gate.
Well, just make sure, if it's a driving while license revoked or some traffic matter, that they are entitled to representational, and just make sure they're aware of the history of it. And at least in Wake County, that can probably be taken care of payments.
And Wake County has a new kiosk, a convenience kiosk, they call it, where anybody who's got old stuff that's not been resolved, if they want to take care of it, they can come up and talk to a district attorney and, handle old stuff. So that helps to know that. Do you know what that's?
It's in the afternoon.
Yeah. 3:30. You get to see one of those too.
I think I'll be seeing it.
I would reiterate Judge Prim's point about the driving restoration
it's a big
work
thing.
with students, though. I think that, and I've done some student pro bono programming with Carolina, and I remain involved with that as an alum, and I think students are thirsty for the opportunity to do legal work, and I think that's an opportunity that the bar could, they need supervision. Obviously, they can't do it without a partnership from a practicing attorney who knows what they're doing. I think if the bar was willing to be engaged with the student population, I think that would be a project, probably, I'm speaking out of turn, but I would think with many law schools, or maybe even all the law schools in the area, would be excited to have that opportunity for their students to get that practice, that practical experience that they can put on their resumes and then talk about in interviews.
It requires you.
The Central has that program as well.
Yes.
It would require them to go to court, and it's all about when you're in law school getting that practical experience. But I'm gonna tell you, one person you're gonna need on board if you're gonna have any kind of clinic like that, and that person's not here, is the district attorney.
You're absolutely right.
Because Wake County has developed a reputation throughout the state for being the most hardcore about some of those issues. So you have to get the district attorney on board with that. It just requires a conversation.
It's an art. There are not really that many private attorneys who are that skilled with the ins and outs of the DMV computer system, because you have to take care of them in the appropriate order.
True.
And get certain ones dismissed, and there's just not that many lawyers, because a lot of times you'll come in and say, I want to take care of an old ticket. The DA says, okay, I'll give you no operator's license, you pay it off, and pay court costs, but that's a moving violation during a period of revocation, which extends your revocation for 2 more years. So you've got to, if the law school is going to do a clinic like that, they need DMV, they need all sorts of input, because the court system really is the minor issue in that. It's how they get handled and in what order they get handled within the DMV computer system that's the real kicker.
There's an art to it.
There's a real art to it. I could name a handful of lawyers in Wake County who really know how to do it. When I was in private practice and I had one of those come up, I just sent them to that lawyer.
But we've gotten to the point now, there are certain things, because of some issues we've had here in this county, I was leaving it that we don't do, the 20-day failures, we don't do failure to comply, sending error, stuff like that. And that's what helps. Yeah, but see, we're gone from the district court bench, and I think folks are not doing that as much as they used to. And that will help in those situations. I think we're getting real close. I know there's more questions unless you all want me to talk for the next 5 minutes. But I'll just say this much, Mr. Gaddy, what you touched on was a very, we talked about that with the Street Safe Task Force, because I used to do first appearances, and I always had those people. I just got out of DOC. And they're sitting there on some bond. Yeah, they're VL, but somehow that order for arrest is still out there, even though when it's VL, it's supposed to be put back in the file. It doesn't get back in the file. And since in some officer's beat packet, they arrest the person, and they just walked out of prison. And there needs to be some system where we can somehow catch those cases while they're in the system. But the question becomes, and this is what we brought for that meeting, who does it? Whose responsibility is it? While they're in DOC? Is it, so that's the big question.
Well, if anybody has, I'm sorry.
I was going to ask a question.
I was just going to say, if anybody knows Tony Tatta's new DMV commissioner over there, this thing with driver's license revoked has gone on forever, and for a long time people around the courthouse just joke about it because they know it's not going to happen. Have an amnesty day where you can come in, and if you pay your ticket or do it, but you won't have any DMV repercussions. In other words, you pay all these things off and you clear up your outstanding debt. Basically, it's a debt to DMV and a debt to the courthouse, and then you get your license.
We've done that with parking ticket. Where they do this little things like amnesty day. But you know what? That would take an act of the General Assembly.
Well, but just if all these people, if all these thousands of people came
it's a lot of them,
and wound up paying $600 a piece, it could be worth it to them, and the state would make tons of money, and it would have a lot of licensed drivers. And licensed drivers, as a rule, are more likely to have insurance, and you have and jobs, and overall you have safer streets and higher employment.
Chuck, if your people are working on the driving issues, do they help them like the music driving while it's local?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Only if it's in the context.
And if they have it available by the time their case is disposed. If they come back later, they can't come back to us the next week and spend half an hour with us. Yes?
I have a question. I know Judge Rostick mentioned that each of them in domestic court can have 500 to 600 cases open at any given time. Quickly, Jennifer, if you could tell us about how many cases you all see on whatever statistic, a year, a month, for average, or what have you. I want to ask a similar question of Chuck, and I have a general idea about legal aid because I still keep in touch, I still consider y'all my people.
And we like
Her piece.
Thank you, my piece. But for those of us who don't know enough about this, because it's not in your practice area, or because you aren't engaged in the legal profession, I think it just gives a telling idea about what the staff members have to do and what you all are faced with.
I think it varies in our office based on the practice area that you're doing. I think I closed, with some management responsibilities last year, I closed about 130 to 140 cases. And that goes from advice and brief service, maybe 2 hours or sometimes less on a case, to 40 to 60 hours on a case. Atia Mosley, who's in 9A doing domestic violence court, she probably closed 200 cases, I'm guessing, last year, because her cases turn over very quickly. So it is just a real range.
This is a printout for, it's a 16-month period from December 30, from July 1st, 2011 through October 31st of this year. It's a 16-month period. But on a 12-month basis, it's about 8,000 cases disposed in the public defender's office during a 12-month period.
How many lawyers would that be?
29. That's a lot. Now, that's not necessarily individuals, that can be file numbers. So
No,
you
yeah,
have 2 or 3 file numbers, but that's a lot of individuals.
Yeah, not necessarily unique.
A lot of them, that's a lot going on, and that's disposed of.
Ms. Simmons, I saw on the slide above, it talks about the ratio of 1 to 19,000. And so I guess the question that I wanted to understand was, you talk about people that get through the screening process and meet the income criteria, whatever that is. And I think about sort of the number of people that get turned away. If somebody makes it through the screening process and they meet all the criteria, do a certain percentage of those people still get turned away just because of this ratio, or do y'all find a way to serve everybody who's within y'all's, the right kind of case and they, meet the eligibility criteria?
Yes, sir. I think that's a great question. As you said, there's eligibility income and citizenship eligibility, and then there's the priority area. If it is within our priority areas, that is the areas of service that we described earlier, it is a very, very rare case where we would just reject it altogether without providing some level of service. It is unfortunately more frequent that we end up only providing advice when extended service representation is needed. But that is something that we do frequently. I'll give you an example. Lockouts, private landlord-tenant lockouts, where a landlord has come in and just changed the locks. I mean, the Mecklenburg County case that is notorious is the one where they took off the doors in wintertime. We don't see that here often, but, you do have landlords changing the locks all the time. We cannot serve those individuals, despite the fact that that's critical, but if it's we just have to evaluate the resources that it takes to go file a TRO, to file an action and a TRO, and the staff time that's going to take compared to the benefit that person's going to get, which might be, 2 weeks more housing, and or maybe you get as much as a month, but you're heading for an eviction process down in a relatively short time frame, and unfortunately, we don't have the person power to handle those types of cases frequently. Now, in an absolute, pitiful situation, we might be moved to make time to do that, but it's very challenging, and it means shoving off somebody else's case that we've already committed to, or is somehow more necessary, we feel like, in the long-term benefit to the family.
Will those cases go to the Volunteer Lawyers Project that you all can't handle?
We do. Seal can probably speak to this very well, but we try to evaluate cases for, a lot of criteria for our volunteer lawyers. And again, we have such a generous bar, but if it's a real quick turnaround like that, frankly, we're just not going to find a volunteer attorney to go file a TRO within 2 or 3 days to help the family that's being locked out. That's just not a realistic prospect. I mean, there are occasions where we're lucky enough to have that happen, but more likely is the case where you've got an eviction that's coming down the pike in 3 to 4 weeks, and you have a bit of time to find the attorney. The attorney has a bit of time to find that in the workload to make the time to work on the case, and then to do the pleadings, to do the preparation like they'd like to do. So unfortunately, I think lockouts is an area that I can identify very easily that we used to be able to do more on, that we have not been able to find the resources for because of the emergency nature of those.
Service time is different for evictions as well, which creates another conundrum as far as finding legal representation. Because once the service is out, and Blair can tell you how quickly the calendar fills up for summary judgments, it doesn't take long for the eviction. And some landlords are bad about locking out, but we're a little more forceful sometimes with some of them to remind them that you may not lock somebody out, and you may not go in the property, and you may not do a lot of things. So we try to be mindful and remind them on a regular basis. We'll dismiss the cases when we find out what they've done.
I think it's more frequent here in Wake County that you get the mom and pop landlord that just doesn't know the law, and they think they can go to it and pay. I'm going to change the locks. They're not entitled to be here. So, and then again, that's another thing as we're evaluating resources. If it's somebody who owns one house, are you really going to invest 30 hours of staff time to make that person do it right for that one family? Which obviously, that's not fair. That's not right. That's not just that they should get away with that. But on the other hand, it's not a landlord of 100 properties where you're making an impact on all 100 tenants over a long period of time. So those are unfortunately the really difficult choices that we're dealing with, virtually every staff meeting.
Paul?
Yes, I am engaged in defending undocumented aliens, and most common crime among my clients is no operator license. The driving license revoked. And most common felonies are identity theft and obtaining property by false pretenses. And under the Democratic administration, they speeded up prosecuting identity theft and then obtaining by false pretenses. And I don't know how many investigators out there that part of it. And I feel the impact. And I'm interested in doing cost-benefit analysis for this policy that was instituted by Democratic government under Democratic government. And it's continuing. I do not know what direction it's going to take, but I would like to. I am interested in cost-benefit analysis. Is there? So do you know any good shows that I can go by and get hold of some statistical data?
The Administrative Office of the Courts keeps data on types of cases that they're broad categories. But they may be able to dice through some of their information. They will not do it willingly or gladly because it takes computer and staff time on their part to separate those out. But to see how, say, identity theft cases for illegal immigrants are prosecuted in various districts, they would not have it broken down that closely. They might have ID theft. They might be able to locate it by statute, though. But it start with the Administrative Office of the Courts, and it'll be like Social Security, they'll tell you no. I don't agree with them there.
Paul, let me throw one more thing out there too on that. The agency that's tasked with that is licensing theft, which is part of DMV. Those are the only folks that are going to basically make those arrests. They'd probably be glad to give you those numbers because they're proud of those numbers in terms of the number of folks they arrest. That's all licensing theft. That's all they do. DMV-related crimes. So that might be a good place to go. But Michelle is standing beside me. That's my hint that it's time for us to take our break. Is that correct, Michelle?
That is.
I'm going to go sit down.
All right. Mary Charles, if you could come up and give us some directions about where things are. While Mary Charles is coming up, I want to thank our panelists again and to show our appreciation in a...
and thank you, Judge Brooks.
Yes.
our parents raised all of us to be appreciative of people that do things for us. This is a token of our appreciation. Judge Cruz, please make some of this well.
Thank you, ma'am.
You are welcome. Absolutely. Bill put it together for us.
That's violence, I love it.
We will have a short break, and is there any?
We're going to take a short break. You use the restrooms. They're out of the auditorium. Turn left. They'll be down to the right. Get some more coffee and juice, and we will resume with our non-legal service providers for our next panel. So, thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, is that what that?
That's what I'm saying.
I know, you know, but you know what? That part is no
How are you? I'm doing great. It's good to see you. I'm so glad. Yes.
Something is something man in the box.
I'm sure somebody's going
That's why
that might be a hard one to repeat.
Okay, yeah. Just sending you some questions.
We actually
I'm so glad to meet you. I'm so glad to meet you. I was just going to mention to you, I don't know, we're looking at stuff for
Yes.
I put some papers back in
That's what you told me.
Are we? Can we get started for the second session? I need the agenda. Do you have the agenda right here? No, that's okay. I just want to make sure that I use the correct title for the agenda. Okay. But you are associate. Okay. Oh, there you are, not we are. Well, we're back again. Thank you for participating this morning, and I am so excited to have this next panel on because living in the legal world, we don't often intersect with the human services world. We may know something about human services providers because of boards we're on or services we've tried to connect our clients with, but I think this is going to be an excellent opportunity for us to get a feel for what's going on, how we can possibly make some connections, and again, like the last section, it's going to be fairly organic. Ask questions, you take people to task, you take us to task. We'll have Linda Nunnally moderating the group, and this will just be a wonderful opportunity. This panel is Understanding Unmet Legal Needs in Wake County from the service provider's perspective. And I know I mentioned that the service providers were service providers, but we also have an attorney who is a former Wake County Bar Association President Sally Scherer, and I know where her heart and her soul rests with her organization. I served on the board briefly. Again, I know exactly where she stands. We also have Adonica, did I pronounce it correctly? McAllister, and she is with Interact. And we have Officer Wendy Clark, who's with Wake County, no, not Wake County, with Raleigh. I know you're not in the Sheriff's Department, I recognize the uniform. And actually a friend of mine is now our chief. We have Officer Wendy Clark for the Raleigh Police Department, and she mentioned that she does a lot of community outreach work. And we have Chris Budnick with A Healing Place, and that's an organization that the Wake County Bar has done some programs with, and you've opened up your space for us to have CLE programs, and we've also provided assistance to your client base. But I would like to introduce Linda Nunnally, and I'm going to do a little bit of a different introduction. Who is a Florida State fan? Who loves Florida State? Who majored in advertising and journalism? Whitney. Whoops. And I know Linda from having been reintroduced to her to serve in this capacity, and Linda was very excited to be our moderator today. She works with Step Up Ministry, and she's the Associate Executive Director. Step Up Ministry provides a lot of services to people in our community coming in various places, but mainly to try to help them move through various phases and step up to get them back on their feet and to be productive and to do the things that they want to do to help their families and themselves. I also know Linda and some other people in this room through the Junior League of Raleigh, and so I know she's awesome. And I'd like to bring Linda up to moderate.
I loved hearing a few of the comments in between the sessions and about how exciting this is to bring together two groups who truly have the exact same goals in mind, but go about it in such different ways. And so this is a perfect opportunity for us to all get to meet each other. And we'll start off with just like a 5-minute introduction from each of you guys to talk a little bit about what you do and the services that you see that are needed for the work that you do, and even perhaps a wish list of what might make what you do easier, and some things that you see that after hearing from the last panel that we might be able to do to make it easier for the justice system that we just heard from. So if you don't mind, we'll just start right here and move down the table.
So the Child Advocate is a relatively new nonprofit started to provide legal representation for children who need but don't otherwise have it, and to do so in a legal mental health partnership. We are lawyers, we are not therapists, and when working with kids, we want to make sure we're doing no harm. We would love at some point, the bigger vision is to just be literally a law firm for kids.
There you go. Now you're on.
Well, if it's too loud, let me know. I tend to be a law firm for kids, whatever they need and are not provided. And there are a heck of a lot of areas where kids need help and don't have it. We have had to focus, however, to begin on just two primary areas. One is bad, high conflict, domestic violence, difficult custody cases, and the other is children who are victims or witnesses to crimes and have to be witnesses in court. I just have to echo what Judge Walsick has said. It is excruciating how many kids are being, I'll use the word destroyed, by parents fighting over them. The need for mental health, not just for these children, and most of the ones we get are already in therapy because they're bad cases, but for the parents. And that's someplace, I don't know if we can find a way that we can get more help that's desperately needed, and it's been helpful here to get some understanding of some places where we might be able to get some help there. But we have people who have volunteered, mental health providers, who can help in a given situation. We have attorneys who are willing to work pro bono to represent children. It's very time consuming, which I think is a reason that legal aid does not take on custody cases very often. I think we've got one which they have here, but that's always been a problem. That family law, and particularly custody, just go forever. It's too expensive. People can't afford it, even people who have jobs. So one of the ways we hope we can help is by at least representing the child in the sense of giving the child a voice and forcing parents to focus on their children's needs and try to let go of their own needs. Sometimes it works. Actually, so far we've been pretty successful. All of the cases that have been finally concluded, we've had to have a review hearing here or there and some really nasty ones, but the ones that have been finally resolved have been done by settlement. And at least nationally and even internationally, it's been shown that that's the general result. If you can get the parents to finally focus on the children and resolve it amicably, it keeps them from going back to court, and they get out of this vicious cycle, sometimes of even using the court to abuse the other parent. One of the issues, yes.
Sally, how does your program differ from guardian ad litem?
We are attorneys. We refuse to be guardians ad litem, even though we're at this point appointed as an attorney/GAL. Even when I was appointed as a GAL back when I was practicing, I would say, I don't know what's best for a child. I'm not going to make that decision. And I don't want to be a witness. I want to be an attorney. And the judges here have been very good working with us and allowing us to be an attorney. And there's interestingly going to be, at least the attorneys in the room, an opinion from the State Bar Ethics Committee on if you're appointed as an attorney to represent a kid in a custody case, what's your role ethically. There are a lot of issues here, but in the custody cases, we're appointed by judges to serve as an attorney.
Can I just make a comment about that? It's sort of cutting edge, which I'm really proud of Sally for getting this going, because I don't know what other counties are doing, but when I assign the child's advocate to a case that I have that's high conflict, I mean, I've had cases that I've given them where the child was suicidal, or the parents have been fighting for 10 years, or these are really tough cases, and I'm treating them like a party to the action, even though they're not really a party. And so there's really no guidelines for us on how to proceed. I mean, if Sally's, one of Sally's people wants to file a motion, I mean, can they file a motion? Are they a party or not? You know, or if I want them to have access to documents, you know, so this has all been waters for us, but it's like critical that we have them to be able to represent the child and not have to be asking for them to do the report or testify in a case that they can actually represent as an attorney.
Sally, are y'all in Wake County? Is just Wake County?
The hope, legal aid is collaborating with us. The hope is to prove that it works, to get whatever, if we need statutory authority, whatever, that it can be, at least legal aid and others can do it in other counties.
Is your caseload?
It's growing constantly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. We've only had one full-time attorney now for, it's been almost 2.5 years, and we've just hired a part-time attorney, so, but we've had several pro bono attorneys. There's more than enough to do, but there's another issue, and I'm sorry Paul's gone, because it's vital, and I don't know how yet we can, but hopefully we can help bring people together to deal with immigration kids where the parents are being deported, the child is a legal citizen. So there are lots of needs. How we meet them, I don't know. This is a really child growing. I'll leave it at that. Those are people have questions.
Thank you. Donica, would you like to talk a little bit about Interact?
Okay, I can talk about Interact. Okay, well, I have been with Interact since 2009. And just, I guess, we're the domestic violence and sexual assault agency for Wake County. Last year, we saw 7,363 unduplicated walk-ins. We had 13,335 crisis line calls. We provided shelter to 903 unduplicated clients and 1,229 duplicated, so some of them have to stay in our shelter more than once. We served 129 sexual assault cases, and for outreach, we have different outreach services. So we have a person that's at the Human Services Department, and then we have 2 court advocates. I'm one of the 2. I work in civil court, and we saw 2,682 cases last year. So my role with Interact, I provide assistance with clients that are seeking domestic violence protective orders from their partners. Generally, I'm the first point of contact. Sometimes people have no idea what Interact is, where they're going. They need restraining orders and safety, and we have to figure out what the next step is for them. And a lot of times they have no idea how the process works, that they'll be coming back for a return hearing. We provide referrals to legal aid. We work very closely with legal aid. We're very grateful for legal aid. But also we have to refer them to other places for shelter when we don't have shelter. We have to help them safety plan. We have to provide transportation for them. And a number of other services too to help them safety plan and think about what the next step is. And we need resources just surrounding all of it. A lot of times people don't think about the bigger picture with domestic violence, and there are a lot of services that are necessary, including what will happen to the client after we're finished providing services for them. A year down the road, what will they need? Will they need financial? Will they be able to maintain their homes financially? Will they be able to maintain some sort of stability after they're out of their domestic violence situation, or will they have to go back to their abusive partner because they don't have the means to maintain, their own safety or the safety of their children? After they're done with their protective order, will they have to file for custody and go into family court? And what's that process going to look like if they don't have funding for an attorney, and if they don't even know how that process works? So there are a lot of unmet needs.
Meet Sally. Sally, meet a Donica.
Yeah. Connected for years with Interact.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much what I do and what we do at Interact and the needs of our clients.
All right. Any comments before we introduce Officer Wendy Clark?
Raleigh Police Department. I've been with Raleigh for about 9 years. For the last little over 3 years, I have been a part of our community policing unit. We currently have about 30 community police officers now. They have downtown, I think we've got 6 community officers, and we've got 6 different districts which all have community officers now. I myself have been downtown my whole 9 years of my career, and I do a lot of homeless engagement. I work with SOAR workers, and I work with Catholic Care Collaborative. We get out and about. The psychiatric nurse will come out and ride with me every now and again. We'll get out and we'll walk the Transit Mall and walk Moore Square. Just put our hands on individuals who might possibly need to be connected with resources, which will in turn help us with our job as far as the individuals who are frequent flyers running out of the systems. So instead of hooking them up or locking them up or taking them to jail and having them come back out the other side, we're finding a lot of success with connecting them with resources and making sure that they get to these appointments. Ms. Smith will, if I come across somebody, I'll call her and she'll come out and meet with them and see what their needs are. And then if they can't get to meetings or appointments or what have you, she will make sure that they get to the meetings. I also work with Love Wings Ministries, the Mennonite ministers. They have a facility over on 707 West Jones Street, which is basically a community. So like yesterday when it was cold and windy and not so nice out, they opened the doors. This was a house that was donated by Hood Church. And basically these individuals would congregate there. I have embedded myself into this community and finally I'm seeing some gains as far as the trust that they're starting to have in law enforcement, at least me anyway. But yeah, the SOAR workers, Alex, SOAR is SSI and SSDI. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with that, but they help them navigate the system and expedite the process. Individuals who may or may not have been diagnosed with mental health issues or health issues, they make sure they get to the appointments, make sure they get assessed, and then they navigate through the system. And Alex is having, well, it was Roxanne McKinney beforehand, and now it's Alex, and they're having great success on getting people connected with Social Security, Social Security disability, and then getting them services and health care and mental health care and everything else that goes along with that. And then hopefully our goal is to make sure that they get housing and are stable.
That's the question this morning, because I've always worked downtown and I'm so aware of how many homeless, obviously, generally in need people there are. How can I contact you or whomever?
I've got a bunch of business cards with me. There's actually several groups that meet. Amanda sits in on one of them as well. We've got Wake County Crisis Collaborative with Paige was talking about that earlier, where they bring hospital administrators in and so forth, so everybody can sit around the table and talk about the different issues that are coming up. We have, I sit with Homeless Engagement Roundtable discussion, which meets once a month, and that basically started with the 7 or 8 of us that do homeless engagement, and it turned into bringing some of the churches in and explaining what homelessness was, because there was a lot of people that had a misconception that it was a sandwich and a blanket, and it's so much more than that. So we got talking about the needs of the community, and we started talking about stabilization center with wraparound services. So you got some community leaders coming together and trying to make some of these things happen, and overcoming some of the obstacles that are in place. You know, we talked about the individuals who are being let out of prison. I have several that I've encountered in the park, and all these obstacles that are in front of them. You've got some individuals who want to get on the right path, but these obstacles keep popping up in front of them to make it nearly impossible. So we're trying to help them navigate through the system. We talked about the felony things that are on people's records. We have numerous housing vouchers. We worked on Project 77, housing vouchers available for these individuals who are frequent flyers. But a lot of them can't have the housing vouchers because they have a felony in the past. And it may have been something with somebody who's mentally ill who didn't have a diagnosis or didn't have medication. And then you can see when they stabilized, when they got the treatment that they needed, and then their criminal history doesn't look so bad. So how do you overcome those obstacles?
Is it appropriate if I see someone to call you?
You certainly can. I'll do what I can to connect you. I mean, I've met a lot of people along the way, and I've built a lot of relationships. So as far as connecting you with the individuals that can help you, we most definitely can.
Well, it's that person who needs the help. I mean, there are some who are regulars, and I recognize them, and they're not harming anybody or getting into trouble, but there are others who obviously are in a place where they need somebody now.
And you know, we have individuals that we work with that know how to navigate the system, and we have individuals on the streets. I'm sure everybody who's worked downtown knows our David Laskys and our individuals who are just, you know, way out there. But we have individuals that we work with, like Alex. Say we have somebody who can't quite fill out the paperwork, or they're too suspicious, or all these things that are going on to make it nearly impossible to get them hooked up with their benefits. You know, these angels, I have to call them, Jane and Alex and them, they'll pick them up, they'll take them, they'll make an appointment with them with Social Security, and have the person sit down in front of the evaluator, and then they'll make a determination right there without the person having to have an evaluation or filling out the paperwork. So,
Any comments for Officer Clark? John?
Just aware that Jane Smith is engaged through the Wake Medical Society Foundation, and they're doing a great job with that program, trying to engage homeless people and get them on their medications. A lot of these people, I think it's an 80% ratio of people who are homeless have mental illness issues.
It's a pretty high
80% or so.
percentage, yeah.
And, or maybe 90, I mean, it's a very high percentage. And so these people can get on their medications, it can help them. They may not want to get off the street, but it can help them tremendously. And that is funded through a private organization that is called the Clark Group Project, or Clark Group Help for Homeless Project. And that's a real good resource if people are looking for a way to help those mentally ill people who are on the street.
I'm on board with the mental health board.
Chris, do you want to talk about the Healing Place a little bit?
Sure. Thank you for inviting me to participate today. My name is Chris Budnick with the Healing Place of Wake County. And who we are and what we do is we provide 3 basic services. We provide overnight emergency shelter for individuals, adults who are homeless. We provide non-medical detoxification. And then we provide, our primary service is a long-term peer-run 12-step-based recovery program for those who are not only homeless but also have a substance use disorder. We opened our men's facility in 2001, and we have 180 beds there. We've been operating at capacity the last year. We have a separate women's facility that opened in 2006, and we have 99 beds there. We average about 76 a night. Our philosophy is, again, our primary focus is on helping individuals find recovery. And our philosophy is that we want to provide services on demand. When somebody asks for help, they get help without waiting. We want to provide services with a low threshold for engagement. So in our emergency shelter, we allow people to come in while they're intoxicated or under the influence. We don't say sober up and then we'll help you. We believe in utilizing the strengths that come from peer-based experience, both in attracting and engaging and helping people navigate recovery. We also believe in as many times as it takes. We don't limit it and say you've been here a couple times, so this is all we're going to be able to do for you. And then lastly, we believe in a hand up instead of a handout approach. And so we match our kind of investment is based on an individual's investment in their recovery. And so what that looks like from a historical standpoint with the Healing Place and legal issues is that we kind of work based on that person's investment in their recovery. So a lot of times people show up and they'll say, I've got X, Y, and Z legal issues, what can you do to help me? And we say, we're interested in seeing you focus on recovery. We're not going to write letters telling the court to be excused from your court date. It's your responsibility to be there, and you can take documentation that you keep, contracts that you sign, meeting sheets that you've been getting signed off on, and the obligation rests with you in the beginning to demonstrate to your attorney, to the courts, whoever, what you're doing. You get into a little bit farther along in the program, and we'll write a letter for you. And the longer you stay, the letter gets longer. And then it eventually gets to a place where we'll go to court with you. It gets to a place where we'll turn to the community and try to find attorneys who'd be willing to offer pro bono services. The history of things that we found very early on when our men's facility opened up was that, and I think I need to say one of the tough things is that for individuals with substance use disorders is that there's the stigma that it's a self-inflicted problem. And since it's self-inflicted, there tends to be a little less understanding and compassion maybe to some of the criminal issues that clients have. But we found very early on that we had individuals who had so many failure to their peers, and they'd go to court for one thing, and then there'd be all these other things that would pop up. And so at that time, Judge Knox was in the DA's office, and she worked closely with the healing place to say, how can we consolidate these individuals' cases and get them in front of a judge at one time for one thing, instead of comes in for this and then leaves, and then turns out there's more stuff there. At that point, we started getting attorneys coming in on a quarterly basis and offering kind of just legal assistance. And we were kind of doing these legal seminars that, we get clients and say, we've got a legal issue, we've got some attorneys coming in on a Friday afternoon, and they're going to donate their time to listen and kind of consult with you. And then we started finding, real people we could turn to, attorneys that we could turn to, and say, could you help with a case? Could you help provide pro bono services to this individual? Again, when they've made a certain investment in their recovery. And our philosophy has been that we're here to help you address the wreckage from your past, not anything you create after you come to the healing place. So if somebody comes to me and say, I got a speeding ticket or I got in trouble for this after they've come to the healing place, we're not here to help you, with that. That's kind of your doing. But on our break, I had 3 voicemails, and 2 of them were from people in recovery calling about one of our alumni who was arrested for an outstanding warrant in Indiana. And this is stuff that sometimes maybe they know about it and other times they really don't. And so we're frequently being met with situations where we will go and help as best we can with individuals who have these things come up after they've left the healing place. And I've had a number of individuals say, I was serving time in prison during this court date. I thought that this was all taken care of. And we're happy to help our clients work on those things. We've worked with the Bar Association. We've done the continuing legal education seminar on an annual basis, usually in February. This year it'll be February 28th. I don't know, maybe the last 5 or 6 years. And we do that, as a way, it's a free service to the bar. We do it because we're always trying to draw people in to learn about the healing place and to see kind of what recovery looks like and to see people's investment. We've also had the Young Lawyers Association that have provided seminars, which has been helpful, and we've had some family law volunteers. Before coming here, I'd asked staff to help me assess some of the current legal needs of our clients, and there are about 102 people that we used as our sample, and 79% had been convicted of a crime in the past. And over half, 55%, have pending legal issues that they're working on. So what we're always looking for are attorneys that can come step up, help out in a way that can minimize the disruption of somebody's made a 12 to 18-month investment in getting into recovery. And it's not to avoid being accountable for past actions, but it's to say what's the best way to do this without disrupting continued progress forward. And that's where, like a lot of times, it's helpful if an attorney can help arrange for somebody to go and turn themselves in, so that it would be easier for them to possibly get back out to their job and so forth, as opposed to getting arrested and then kind of waiting and kind of taking a little bit of a longer process. People end up losing their jobs through that, and it kind of is a setback towards moving towards self-sufficiency, which is our ultimate goal. And the self-sufficiency and the outcome from clients when they get in recovery is tremendous. We every year ask our alumni to share their W-2 information with us. Last year, our alumni paid an estimated $1.9 million, or had $1.9 million withheld in taxes through employment. And when we get people into recovery and give them an opportunity to be full participants and citizens, they make considerable contributions to society. And I'll go a step further and just say I'm a person in long-term recovery from addiction. I haven't used alcohol and other drugs in over 22 years, and because of that, I've been able to be a productive member of our community. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes.
It's actually interesting, Chris. It sounds like you're talking or thinking primarily of criminal legal needs. Are there civil legal needs as well for your client population?
There are, of the 102 clients we talked to, 37% have criminal, 17% have child support, 7% have family, 11% have tax. 16% listed other, and 13% had multiple. And there's funny things that'll happen. One of our guys who was on the streets of Raleigh for 10 years before, and he came into our detox about 16 times in an 18-month period before he finally got sober. You know, like, sometimes it's not the idea that, do I have a problem? It's the idea of like, okay, if I really get sober, will I be able to do this? And so he has all these unanticipated issues, like what happens when you get an address? Oh, they can find you now. And so one of the first things that happened to him when, you know, it's like, okay, you signed a lease, you got an address. IRS just found you, you know. And so there's different things that come up from people's past that are not just strictly criminal, but can be tax related and so forth.
We found that, including IRS, the other agencies who have lost these people, once they know that they're in a long-term program with you, that they'll recall things, take things off the front burner to allow you to work with these people, and in that long-term process, get them on a permanent, leave on a permanent basis.
There's been remarkable cooperation and collaboration.
I know you have a great reputation in the court system with IRS, child support enforcement.
Child support, I mean, I'll give you, for instance, Judge Ruth used to send people to the healing place in lieu of keeping them locked up, and we've seen many people who have come here who are multiple years sober now, paying child support, knowing that there's a risk that if they come to the healing place that they'll leave, but recognizing that there's a problem. If we get help for that problem, that there's positive return that can occur. So we see that with child support. We see it with probation, withholding probation fees, saying, I understand that you're at the healing place and you can't work right now. We're not going to have this pile up on you. We've seen tremendous cooperation and assistance from law enforcement. You know, when I get a call from a Raleigh police officer saying, we, you know, stopped one of your guys who was a witness to a crime, and he's concerned that he's going to be late for class and will lose a spot in your program. Thanks, that's all we need to know. His bed's secure, don't worry about it. You know, when I've gotten a call from a judge once saying so-and-so ended up having to get locked up and they wanted you to know so that you don't think that they just disappeared. Those things are very helpful. Again, the probation with holding off on fees, child support, working with our clients while they're there, recognizing that, you know, you got to hold off on charging or enforcing the child support, let them get stable in recovery, and then start working on those things is helpful. Not so much with the IRS. We haven't had as much interaction with that, but open to ideas.
One legal piece that I haven't heard mentioned yet today that I know we face a lot at Step Up is just employment, hiring people who've had substance abuse problems, who've got a background, and there's a real need for education in the community for employers to give these folks a chance, because if you don't, they're going to end up back in the prison system, which is a whole lot more expensive. But and I don't know that our group as attorneys can really do much for that. We are, advocating to have the check your box looked at. In fact, I was just hearing maybe this year it's going to come up.
Yeah, that issue is and the box we're talking about, and we're hopefully they have it on the legislative agenda this year. And I just want to address that for a moment. That the question on the front of the application sometimes when people check it, obviously, if you've got a criminal background or whatever, about 95% of the times the employer will not call that person back. And we believe that it can be kind of unfair and discriminatory even, because the employer has no idea what kind of rehab that person has done, what kind of certifications they've done, what they've done to improve their lives. So we're saying at least give a person a chance at an interview to come and show themselves, and then the paradigm may change about that person because they've gone to a place, they've got certificates, they've got their substance abuse under control. So that's why we're not saying to take it out of off the application altogether, but just off the front page and ask it later.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I know at Step Up, what we do is when people go in for an interview, they lead with that. They lead with, this is where I came from, this is my background. And we've got two people on staff that do nothing but go out and meet with employers. That's all they do, and try to change their ideas. And we've got over 200 employers right now that are hiring people. And I know at Healing Place, we've had folks that have left the Healing Place that have come through, and you guys have hired people that have come through Step Up. So that collaboration and that conversation and just knowing the barriers that are keeping people from success are so important, because without the success, just if you keep hitting these barriers, you're going to learn to fear the system, you're going to learn to run from it, and you're going to end up back where you in the position you were trying to leave from to start with. So are there any other barriers, the legal barriers, that you all have not heard us mention today?
This is like a little bit on the reverse side, and it's just an observation and a comment from a provider's perspective. Okay? There are times when we sit back and say, we're really glad that this person's in prison. We're really glad that this person's in jail right now. And it's I don't know if it's a sad statement about the type of resources that are available, or if it's just more of a realistic statement about sometimes that's the best place for somebody to be due to the degree of public health problems and risks that they cause, the risks to society, and their own personal inability to stop using and stop the destructive things that are going on with that. We got 2 guys right now, and there's general consensus among staff and among their peers that are like, that's a good place for them to be right now.
I'm just curious, because it may simply be my age, but I just have the sense that the legal system and outside of it is just so much more complex and so many more almost insolvable problems that I feel overwhelmed by it, where I didn't.
I think it's easy
30
to be
years
overwhelmed.
ago.
Yeah.
And in that context, I don't know if there's some way that we could, out of this, get some list, compendium, or something of all of the different service providers that we have, resources. Because I know we get hundreds of calls and are sending families, kids to different places that we know can provide something we can't provide, but there's a whole lot more out there, I know. I mean, I've learned about a lot already here today.
I think if it's complete enough, I think that's Corinne's idea of the flow chart. It's a great idea. If we get nothing else out of this, the judges, law enforcement, social services, child support enforcement, I can just think within the legal system, dozens of segments that if they had a complete as humanly possible flow chart, you could look at the flow chart and say, here are some options for you. And for instance, you complete the Healing Place. There's another flow chart that you can go to, maybe a DMV assistance agency of some sort that clean up driving records, for instance. But I think that would solve, if it's done well, as a lawyer, child support enforcement flow charts and uniform child custody jurisdiction flow charts. If they're done well, it's a no-lose proposition to just simply follow the arrows and direct people to where they need to go. And I think that would be a wonderful result of this.
That is a great idea. And even help the different groups, people who are facing children's issues and people that are facing addiction issues or domestic violence. So, just to have their own flow chart, have a group come together and help us make our own flow charts too would be great. John?
This is probably a lunchtime discussion, but playing on the theme of the flow chart, obviously that would be a very static tool, but if we can do it online, it can be changed and updated, and it would require something like input from business school students at state or something like that, because it's a really complicated problem. It's much more complicated than putting a bunch of agencies on a chart, because then what services do those agencies provide? What's the contact information? Whereas if it's web-based, it could be much more interactive. I went through the experience recently of trying to find services for an elderly person, and I talked to some of the people in the room about it, but I was amazed at how much information I couldn't get from people who were in a position that they should know, like the Wake Health Department, Wake Social Services. And it wasn't because they didn't want to help, it's because they just didn't know. And then I'd find out something somewhere else in a different agency. It's a remarkable maze for somebody who is somewhat familiar with working through the legal system.
Right, yeah.
You mentioned the business school at State Together Health. Campbell, I'm a third-year student at Campbell here, and Campbell has a dual degree with the business school at State as well as the Master's of Public Administration program. And someone who's doing the MPA, and the JD might want to take this on as like a kind of internship project, but something where they would have, knowing with the MPA program, you know a lot of the governmental services as well as some of the nonprofits out there, and then a lot of the legal services. I think that would be something that would be interesting to a joint MPA JD student.
Yeah, so definitely in this, the lunchtime discussion, if you're in John's group, go for it, or the other group, go for it, because I think this could be I'm not putting you in charge of the job.
And there already is, I know most people are aware of a directive with County Human Services that we use is pretty practical, but it can be enhanced by what we're talking about. There's already a directive with County Human Services, it's online, so get that. It's got everybody in here on it almost.
And it's up to us as nonprofit groups or social human services to keep our information updated because it changes. And I know a lot of times I'll see.
It's not all connected. Like
it's not.
I want to go find something. I'm going here, there, and I still can't find it.
And if we can't find it, think about the people we're trying to help. Yes, ma'am.
I like the input about having something that's not static because if it's a piece of paper and so much changes, I know there's a program that we have had that changed in 2000, and a piece of that paper will emerge somewhere, and somebody will take it to a service provider. That provider makes copies, and I start getting all these calls about housing families and children. I'm like, where did you get this information? I try to track it down. But I really do support having something, that people can access, and at the same time being able to change that information, so that it changes and people can get up-to-date, current information. And, that's one of the things that the Women's Center does is try to help people through that system, because if it's changed, you have given somebody a number and they're calling, they're already, stressed out from whatever, homelessness, domestic violence or whatever, and you're having them make all these calls and they're getting even more frustrated. So I'm not saying I want to work on that team, but I want to see.
And your name is?
Gene Williams.
Yes, I'm going to tell her that, Lily. I actually chair that team, Lily. And we're in the midst. We have an online resource guide for Wake County that is up to date. We've just actually added new updates this week. And so it's going to be continually updated online so that it has access to service providers, community partners, people in the community, and consumers. The website is still under construction because we have pro bono web developers.
Yeah.
So that's our only holdup. But
what's your organization?
My organization is the Healing Place, but it's actually we have a group of representatives from multiple service provider agencies.
So what are we looking like? What are we looking for? What website name?
www.wakehrg.com. So wakehomelessresourceguide.com.
And this is available for members of the community, correct?
Yep.
So what about members of the community that don't have access to the internet?
That's the only issue.
Well, what about members who want homes, but who still need these other things?
Right.
Say it again.
if you aren't homeless, and you need access to resources is what Bill suggested. I think Adonica suggested what happens if you don't have access to the internet, because we know many people in the community and people that we're talking about don't have access. I know yesterday I was telling Linda, when I talk to people, I'll say, do you have access to the internet?
One of these things there?
No, unfortunately, no.
Just children, just kids.
Because access to the internet means different things. It means I can go to the library and use the computer at the library, or I can go to the community center. But when the issue pops up, you might be at your house without transportation or what have you. You can't get access to it.
Well, and access to the internet doesn't necessarily mean just having access to the internet. You have to know how to use the internet too. Some people know how to get on Facebook and don't know how to get on Google.
Which I think it's going to be really important to get the word out when that site goes live.
And the site is live now, it's just not very good. It's not how we want it to look, but you can go on there now. And I'm just going ahead and giving the website out so people will have it when it does get like we would like to see it updated. But there's also a tool where you can email, and a group of us will monitor those emails, and we can do updates for different service providers like within 48 hours, so that we're not waiting 6 months or a year to get information that this program is no longer an option. It was definitely something that was lacking for Wake County, and so we came together and are almost there.
But are you suggesting that this is something that you don't need the help of students who might be in the nonprofit, JD, MBA kind of program thing, or?
I just think it would depend on what resources we were talking about. As far as the homeless resources, we have that in this website. But as far as expanding it into more legal services or other areas to access for consumers who are outside of the homeless population would still be a need that needs to be met.
And there's a whole lot.
Thank you. But don't give up.
And even if there's things that exist, there's still, how does that information get linked properly to the people who need it, and then how do they interpret it to understand how to use it?
Jennifer?
I just wanted to bring the conversation back to the question of, or reemphasize, I suppose, the question of collaboration and outreach and education. Because there's some legal problems that are so self-evident. If I have a court date, I've obviously got a legal problem, right? But there are other legal problems that I think are less intuitive. And whether it's the person who has the legal problem, or whether it's their social worker or person at the shelter they describe the situation to, I think having them be able to identify that as a potentially legal problem is a really important piece. And Officer Clark, you were describing admissions to subsidized housing, and that's actually where my brain started on this. That is such a critical issue for the very low income, and I'm including their recipients of SSI because, we all know you can't live off $704 a month unless you're receiving either a subsidy or you're pooling your income with someone. So, and you mentioned admissions. I mean, that's a legal problem, but I can tell you, at Legal Aid, we don't see, I've been there 8 years now, and I can think of less than 5 admissions to subsidized housing cases. That's not a legal problem that's coming in the door, but that's a case that potentially we could help and make a really big difference in people's lives. I know, just because it's my own personal area of specialty, Medicaid appeals, people don't realize that that's a legal problem. If you get turned down by your insurance company for a health care service, people don't recognize that as a legal problem. I think identifying the legal problems that people may or may not, that are not clear-cut summons and complaints, is a really important thing to do. It's something that just needs conversations.
I agree. Are there any other questions or comments? Yes.
My question is fairly general, but since you all were just talking about that a little bit, what have you been able to do with your programs to address issues of access? Rather, whether it's transportation or information about your program, how have you been able to deal with that within, specifically for your programs?
Well, we're known in the community because it's a legal service for kids, and I've made made it an issue to try to inform lawyers, not that they all know, but to one, get support from them and to get them to volunteer, whatever their expertise may be. But the other is reaching out to other entities, Safe House, Interact, Haven House, any of the programs for kids. But there's so much more, like we have issues with Medicaid and the kid needs it and you can't get them on it, or whether we get CPS or whatever. So it's almost an organic thing, at least for us. I don't know about others.
Well, we do a number of different outreach activities. So we're in schools doing different activities, and also we see, we're fairly well known in the community. And like I said, we're in the Human Services building. We're in the courthouse. We see walk-in clients. We have a crisis line. Law enforcement has our information, so when they respond to DV calls, they're giving people our information. If there's a sexual assault started 2 years ago, they have to come through our office unless they have injuries for a rape kit, whether or not they're reporting it to law enforcement. So that's pretty much how our services are provided and how the word is out about our services. In terms of the other services that we provide, it's a matter of what the client needs. So if I see a client in the courthouse and I know that they don't have a safe place to go or transportation, and she and her children haven't eaten all day, I don't have an office in the courthouse. My office is over there. That chair is my purse. I am calling the office, the crisis lines, and I'm like, okay, I need a cab for this person because we collaborate with Cardinal Cabs Company. Do we have, any room in our shelter program for this person? What can we do for this person? It's all a matter of collaborating with the different programs within our agency as well. And then our office houses different programs as well. We work closely with WIC-10. We work closely with the Salvation Army, the Healing Place. We work closely with the Y and RPD and the different law enforcement agencies as well.
Okay, I'm sorry, but if you guys have like one sentence, Michelle just asked me to get us wrapped up so we'll be able to go into lunch. So, go ahead.
I was just going to say that Raleigh Police Department now is basically us getting out and speaking to people. We have lots of training now that we've implemented. CIT program also implements a session of their training where resources are talked about. Our community policing program, we put together a certificate program for all community officers to go through, which also talks about different resources that are available for different populations.
Chris?
I'll see if I can craft this in one sentence.
You can quote Mary sentence if you like.
Family program, RPD, Lions, going to meetings and talking to people, web presence,
Word of mouth.
I think the community that we're all working with has an incredible networking system. And it might be nice to bring some of the folks that we serve, some of the participants, the clients, into this discussion to find out how they do get their information. But I know we'll have a lot of time to talk about this during lunch. There's material on the table over here from most of the groups that you've heard in this session, so feel free to grab some information on your way out. And Michelle will tell us how to proceed to lunch. And I want to thank you guys. You come from such diverse backgrounds, and you work with such different populations, and you just hear the same needs over and over. So thank you so much.
I'm going to ask that our panelists remain seated for a little bit. I want to bring Ted Edwards up. I mentioned earlier that he's our past president for the Wake County Bar, and Ted, along with Bill, I remember in our public service committee meetings we've been talking about having something like this, but Ted really was the person that really helped push me to making this happen. And I'd like to bring Ted up to make sure that he can give you some words of encouragement and whatever he wants to say to address the group. John May was a past president of the Wake County Bar, and John was the chair of the Public Service Advisory Committee for the North Carolina Bar Association. Ted, take it away.
Thank you, Michelle. I'll be very brief. I'm just wanting to express just how excited I am that we were able to have this program today, and how we are able to sort of bring together the existing web of public service agencies and community service agencies together, so we can have a dialogue and a conversation about how we can work together and increase the synergies that exist between the various entities. And I'm hoping that this won't be a one-time event. I think there's a lot of benefit in this conversation that is going on now, and that we can continue on a regular basis in some form this dialogue. As a legal provider, there are just so many instances as I see that there are. I see it from a legal perspective. There's the various needs that that aren't getting met, and there's so much opportunity for us to do a better job in servicing the various populations that we all have a heart to try to help. And so I'm just excited about us coming together. And I also think that one of the sort of the benefits, I don't know if I want to say benefit, but one of the sort of ramifications of the economy that we face is that when I was president of the Bar Association last year, is that there is untapped legal talent right now. There are underutilized lawyers and that are out here trying to get their career started and are trying to get established, that I think if we can sort of direct needs and make needs known in the right mechanism, I truly believe that we can get more help for people that need it. And that's why I'm really excited about, when we talk about, the website and utilizing students to pull together this flow chart or whatever it ends up being. I think that if we can continue our dialogue and we can continue to talk together and think about sort of where are the gaps and where do we need to sort of supplement what we're already doing, that I think we can sort of find ways that we can benefit these populations that we're all trying to serve in different ways. So thank you all again for coming and participating this day. I know we're all very busy, and to take time out of our schedule is hard, but I think there's a lot of utility to it. And so thank you all for coming, and I just hope that we are at least able to sort of have each other's contact information, and we can communicate, even if it's by email or by some other technological way, so that we won't just sort of let this be a one-time thing, because there's a lot of things that we can do to make things better. So thank you.
And once again, I am going to hand it over to another member of the North Carolina Bar Association, Emily Mosley. She's going to talk a little bit about a program called Call for All, and hopefully to get some new recruits. Thank you.
Thank you all very much for giving me a few minutes. I know that Ted has set forth clearly the legal representation crisis that legal aid and clients are facing, and legal aid is currently working on due to budget cuts and increased need. There is a new program called Call for All, which has been going on for about a year. We're in the process of being renamed to Lawyer on the Line, which is a partnership between Legal Aid of North Carolina and the North Carolina Bar Association Foundation, through which attorneys who are in private practice or in-house or in certain cases government attorneys volunteer to take one call a week, one call every other week, one call a month, from a pre-screened legal aid client who just needs discreet legal advice on a problem they're having. It's an issue that legal aid staff feels that if they can just get the advice they need, they can move forward on their own, whether it's going to small claims court or writing a letter to their landlord or knowing even frankly whether or not they have a claim. Thus far we have 600 volunteers who have helped 3,500 legal aid clients. It's going extremely well. I think we have about a 98% retention rate. It's very flexible. If attorneys are in trial or on vacation and can't take a call that week, you simply respond back to the email saying this is a really bad week for me, and it's referred out to somebody else. We're very fortunate that for the first time we finally have more folks who need help than volunteers. For a while, legal aid was figuring out how to structure this, and so it was taking a while for calls to make it on out. We now desperately need more volunteers to take these calls, so we're trying to reach the point of getting 1,000 volunteers up from 600. So if anybody is so inclined and would like to volunteer, Michelle has handouts with the information, or you can go to the Bar Association website and click over pretty quickly to the link. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Emily.
I don't know about you, but I'm very overwhelmed. This is something that I had been thinking about doing for a while. I attended a similar program, but it was on a national scale that was put on by the American Bar Association, brought it back here and talked to Public Service Committee, and then, like I said, when Ted kind of pushed us more and more in the direction of, let's get this done. But this is just awesome. What we intend, as Ted suggested, is that this won't be the last time that we talk. And the folks that are in this room, plus other people who were either unable to attend or didn't get the word or whatever it was, didn't know about it, that we want to continue to invite people. I know that there are some people that were invited because other people were invited, and we said, oh, they should be here for sure. Make sure somebody from that organization is here. But we want to have continuing engagement with our groups, the service providers and the legal community, so that we can get a better understanding about what's going on and try to, didn't know about these groups that you mentioned, Wendy, in terms of what's going on with the homeless population. Didn't know about, some people may not have known about what Sally does. And I think that it's going to be helpful because as we come together and try to figure out, how we can better serve people, Sally might be able to help us with X. Won't know whether she will do it, but she might know the resource. And we have this online resource with this directory. So again, at the end of the day, we will ask, won't be today, but the end of after lunch, we will ask you to commit to working with us at least electronically by email or something along that line. What we will do this at lunch, you will have some instructions at your table, but I will review them. We will have an opportunity to do, we've all gone to trainings where you do brainstorming, blue sky. One of my big things with brainstorming is that there are no rules. So you can think of the wild and crazy thing, whether it's Amnesty Day for your driving while license revoked, whether it's that or whether it's, I suggested, and I know Craig Kroon kind of bristled up when I said this, close your ears, Judge Walker, that maybe the judge isn't the best person to make the decision in a child custody case. Maybe there's something else that we do before it gets to the judge.
The legal system is the worst place for families that are in crisis. They don't belong.
You're not going to offend any judge by saying
No.
But I mean, I understand. But it's those wild and crazy things that we can then maybe start from. This is wild and crazy. Maybe we can do something a little less to then bring some harmony in our communities. Because we want our communities to be successful, because we have children in the communities, we have our parents, our families, our friends, etc. So what we will do, we will have a series of 3 small exercises during our working lunch, and I have some instructions that will be on each table. But basically, you will go through an issue identity process where you're going to identify an issue at your table, such as, and I've given an example, obtaining child support. And then, you're going to identify the community affected. You don't have to do a whole lot of hard thinking about it. That's not the goal. The goal is to whatever's on your mind, wild, crazy, or otherwise, put that on there, and you'll have a sheet. You have flip charts you can use, but we'll have a sheet that you can use to report with, because those will be the sheets that will then ultimately come back to us. We will then take them to the Public Service Committee. I'll put together an outline of a report. I'll take that back to my committee, and then we'll discuss it, have a group that will work on it, and then ultimately take that suggestion and that report to the Wake County Bar Association's board for the board to review, and then hopefully we can figure out what we can implement as a bar association, either through our strategic plan and or partnerships with many of you, with Camden Law School, et cetera. The second part of the program, the working group, is that we will do some action identities. You've selected several issues. You may not get to all of them. Try to get to 3 of them, and you're going to identify the action that's necessary, whether there's an agency or organization that can be or should be tasked with kind of overseeing that, and what are the community resources that are needed. And then after we've done that, the easier part, there won't be as much writing, but maybe some of the back and forth will be identifying priorities. And the priorities that we identify today won't necessarily be those of a larger group or of the Wake County Bar Association, but to give the Wake County Bar Association and our community of folks who've been here an idea of what we thought was important on February 1st, 2013. So we will have lunch. We have boxed lunches. I think you can go. How do we get to your?
Either doorway, just to the same hallway, and there's a lobby on the left. You'll turn to the left here.
Okay, so when we go out this door or that door, we're going to ultimately turn to the left. If you came in where the security officer was, it's the other side. Okay. If you do that, you'll see the tables set up, and ideally, I would know the lawyers in the room. Well, I'll make it easy. We want to try to have a balance where we have at least 1 lawyer per table or 2 lawyers, because we want to be able to have some input from the legal community as well as the human services community, so that it won't be just one-sided, so that people can have some back and forth. Plus, I think it's a good networking opportunity for folks. And Sally, I'd like you to be a lawyer today. So let's go. It's time to go grab our lunch, and we'll go through the instructions. Oh, wait a minute, I almost forgot.
First one.
Yeah.